a point.
Bonus points for Tim.
I'm Peter Van Can. I'm faculty in kinesiology, and I got interested in online teaching a number of years ago. And so I took the various Teach Online resource courses, and so I got interested to the point where I kind of decided to redesign all the classes I've been teaching for the last 24 years, and so that I've been coming to all of these things as I can, and because I think they're very valuable, in terms of the combination that they have of the pedagogical aspects and how to implement it in a way that appeals and engages the students.
All right. I'm going to put that down, online versus face-to-face, because I think that there's an interesting, they're often separated, but I think that you're seeing that there's combinations or connections there. Tom?
I'm Tom. I have a dual appointment in UW Housing and the Nelson Institute, and I teach a couple courses in there and manage some programs in there. And we mainly use Canvas in class for digital lab manuals.
Hey.
Yeah, and we're in the second year of doing that and have gone through some growth in what format and how to do that sort of thing. That's our main use. We also do a lot of file management in Google Drive, but the students never access it in Google Drive. They actually access it through Canvas. So I'm using Canvas in class.
Right.
And yesterday we talked a little bit about embedding
And I couldn't come, I was in class.
Google Drive in, and we use your resources. Thank you for creating those.
Yeah.
I wish I could have made it.
It was so much fun, Tom.
I'll just give
Never be able to
lecture.
recreate that
Yeah.
fun.
I'll just record it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
My name is Heidi. I'm also in ESL. I also use Canvas in class, and I'm just curious to see how other people use it. Sometimes I have a Google Docs slideshow on which I project information, but I've been sort of moving that into Canvas, and so that I don't have to toggle back and forth between two things. And so I'm just kind of curious how people might use Canvas to facilitate specific tasks and activities in class.
All right. So, that last thing you said, Canvas for facilitation, is sort of, I think, well, that's the big thing for the Canvas in class, because oftentimes, again, with desire to learn, it was largely we don't even open it up in class. And the structure of the university and traditional learning was that people didn't bring laptops or devices to class, so the learning management system was something that they accessed back in their residence halls, in the computer lab, or wherever if they needed to. As devices become more and more ubiquitous, they're bringing them with, either in laptops or tablets or the mobile devices. So the opportunity now to start to have some digital interactions in class are becoming greater and greater. And because Canvas is sort of used to structure the class, using Canvas as the structuring of those in-class digital interactions as well, in some ways makes a lot of sense. But, Jim?
I didn't want to interrupt. Okay. So what you're talking about reminded me of a question I had, and I should have added it to the board. But to what extent can we expect students to bring their own gear? And I know we kind of touched on this a little with the UDL thing last week. But I'm curious, like if we're running a course using Canvas and a student doesn't have access, whether all the laptops have been signed out, whatever, they don't have something. We need to cater to them in some way. So,
one of the, I was just forwarded an article from Margaret Merrill, who you may remember from the Active Teaching Lab years ago, was a project assistant here, and now she's at UC Davis as an instructional technologist, and she was just in an article that was called, "Dear Professors, even if you aren't using mobile, your students are." And it was they had done a survey out of 1,000 students, 4 of them didn't have
I know
Use
it's
devices.
vanishingly small.
Now, just because you have a device does not mean that they show up at your class with a fully charged device.
Or a charging cable.
Or a charging cable, and even if they did a charging cable, they might not be sitting next to a outlet like Cliff here to be able to charge it at their spot, right? Because our classrooms were never designed to be charging stations for students. So yeah, there are all these questions of, is it a reliable thing to expect that students bring this? I remember Tom working with the Environmental Science 126 class, that when we wanted them to do this thing with mobile devices, we told them ahead of time, make sure that you bring your device, otherwise we'll have a couple available for you, and we had to provide those iPads. But even so, the biggest thing we found out was there were several groups that when we had them go out on campus and do some exploring and photo documenting. There were several students that couldn't finish because my phone died halfway through. And, okay, this is, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I guess in some ways that makes sense. Less and less, people are bringing the battery packs with them and things like that. Those things have developed. But I think it's a really good point that we can't depend on that yet.
We used to bring like 20 iPads and loan out most of them 3-4 years ago, and now we roll in this cart of 20 iPads and we'll just look at it and go, why would I need that?
It's an extra thing that I have to be responsible for?
Yeah, I'll just use my phone. I have it customized however I want.
Right.
Yeah.
And we find the same thing like at the active teaching lab when we would say, hey, people will come in and say, oh, I want to demo this. Here's a flash drive. And I'm like, oh, I don't want a flash drive. Bring in the device that you're already comfortable with, and we find that people they're comfortable on their own devices. They're uncomfortable using other people's devices. So right, okay, good point. Can we do it? Can we expect them? Then the other point was, how well does this work for those kinds of interactions? And I think that is, the answer is not where we want it to work yet, but it's getting better. Certainly it's a lot better than Desire to Learn did. I think it's, the more we explore it, this topic of how do we use this, should we use it, the more it's going to, we'll find out ways and Canvas will change accordingly.
On Tim's note, we definitely have some students who prefer paper lab manuals.
Right.
And at the beginning of the semester, we survey them and say, do you have access to a laptop, or can you rent one from our library, or would you strongly prefer that we print you out one and provide it to you? And some people do that, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Some people print it out themselves and do it. We occasionally go on some field trips that a laptop just doesn't make sense to do it, and so we print it out for them.
I mean, in a similar way, we have a course manual, but all the materials are also on Canvas, and students have the option to buy that if they want to, or they can print their own.
Yeah.
Or just not bother.
Yeah.
It's less than $10 to print.
Yeah.
Buy. So.
I'm always surprised that the vast majority of our students bring a laptop to lab rather than a tablet.
Oh.
Because it's a lab, it's a dry lab, but we are still moving around the room a lot and moving around the building and going to other buildings too. And over the past 2 years of doing it, we've had 2 people regularly bring a tablet and do it. And one person even did it on their phone. Did the entire lab course on their phone just with a little Bluetooth keyboard.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Wow.
But it's a backup. If their laptop dies, they can switch to their phone.
So that's another aspect of this is what devices, the laptop is set up very well for typing. Is typing the right
For math, no.
medium? Right, for math, no.
Yeah.
And what a lot of mathematicians will do is they'll say, here's a piece of paper, write your equations here, and then take a picture of it and upload the picture.
Yeah.
And the students, that was another thing from that we found out in the class that you were in, with you were a TA for the Environmental Science 126, is we said, if you have any questions, call this number on the screen, and immediately, like half the class took out their phone and took a picture of that number rather than writing it down.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, of course. I mean, that makes total sense. We use these devices in a lot of ways. The traditional way of this or this is not the way that
Yeah.
this is good.
I always have my phone in a pocket. If I write down a Post-it note, it may not end up in my pocket.
Right. We're gonna be talking more about devices and mobile, specifically at a lab on designing for mobile towards the end of the semester. So let's put a thumbtack in that for now and set it aside. But let's talk about in class using, what does that look like for the lab manuals? You keep it on the learning management system in Canvas. You have a page. On that page, you've got a link to a Google Drive
Yep.
where they can
Link and embed.
link and embed, right? Because that's good practice to have both the embeds so they can access it there, but also the link so they can open it up in a new window if they wanted to, or its own window without the canvas paraphernalia on the side.
Yeah.
And what is the, so then they're on this screen and two of them with tablets.
Yep.
Using the built-in keyboard there.
Stencils, pencils, tablets. That one, not stencils.
Stencils.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
love
Apple
stencils.
pencils.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got one student with a Bluetooth keyboard and
And
a
his
tiny
phone,
little
yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
Which at least is better than,
Yeah.
using the thumbs to try to finish an assignment. But so really Canvas again is a delivery mechanism for Google Doc.
Yeah. Last year was PDF forms, which there were like 40 troubleshooting issues, mainly in the first week of the semester, and then a couple trickled out afterwards. It was really remarkable because we launched this Google thing this semester, and then we just kind of waited for the first week of class, and one person raised their hand in 60 people to say, it's not opening for me. And all the like saving issues are gone, all the like weird version history, all the weird formatting with PDF forms of the box, like auto truncating the text and lines disappearing, all that's pretty much gone. And so it's been working really smoothly. We just kind of launched it, and week one was just like too smooth.
Yeah.
Like, where's the troubleshooting? Yeah. Yeah, we had to like keep walking around the room like, are you okay? Like, you accessed it, right? Now it's too quiet. Yeah, it's fine. Like, it's working.
It's too bad you weren't here yesterday for the Google and Canvas session.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
We'll revisit. We've ended up revisiting a lot of these things over
Yeah.
and over again.
One unexpected thing, which I really should have expected it, but one unexpected thing was they're in pods. They're working of groups of 3 to 6. I have my lab manual open in one tab, and I have my partner's lab manual open in another. Or they're physically working on the same lab
Okay.
and then splitting it apart when they submit.
Okay, so they do some of the divide and conquer.
Yep. Yeah, which is okay. We are fine with that. We say you're a team, you're in this together. This is lab. We're not trying to assess you on this, but we do quiz and exam assessment of lab material.
But these are not groups that are set up in Canvas.
No, these are physical. You go to a pod, and that's your group.
Okay.
Yeah.
People share one Google Doc.
Yeah. The more efficient groups, I'll say. But it is funny, like I'm helping a student and their lab partner is like typing on the question afterwards, and I could see their name and I'm
But so do they each submit their own
Yes.
doc,
yes.
even though that they collaborate on?
Yeah, and with the groups that choose to do it that way, we do talk about academic integrity with them, just one-on-one.
And Heidi, for you, you're talking about using Google Slides, which again would be a delivery mechanism within Canvas, not actually using any of the tools in Canvas other than the ability to embed in pages.
Or sometimes I don't even use the Google Slides, but I use Pages to set up activities.
Okay.
Like directions and tasks, and the students can go into the page and they can get to the links
So you'll project perhaps for the people who don't have the devices so they can see the instructions, but if they do have the devices, they can go into their own and see the links and get to the things that they need to do there as well. Okay.
And when I said the Google Docs in Canvas, what I meant was I used to have like Google Docs and I would project instructions or what we're doing, but then I have to make the Google Docs and I have to do the Canvas. And so then I just started actually cleaning activities that I would have in Google Docs into the Canvas pages.
Right.
And so I'm thinking about how durable they are, making pages that are activities that I do again and again and again, so I can duplicate them or copy them from semester to semester. And just have that no longer and get away from using Google Docs actually. Have a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
That's what I want, is a one-stop shop.
Simplify it so you have more time for the rest of your life.
So I'm not,
Yeah.
Yes, Cliff.
Okay, so I have a question that comes from a not like academic world perspective. So I'm trying to envision, and at least as we go about the issue of whether or not people have devices. Like how often as an instructor are you wanting to use the technology in a way that demands and requires everybody must be responding? Are you giving quizzes in class where you expect them to be satisfying and have a device on them? Or so I say there, how often must they have something versus how often is
if there's one person in the group who has a device, in a group of 2 or 3,
Yeah.
that's fine.
That's
The
good.
class can run.
Yeah, that's right.
The
So
class.
when you say don't have a group of people who don't have any device, you make sure you find a group. So
You know, I mean, if I give quizzes, you know, like multiple choice questions and so on, I regularly embed a document that I say, well, you can look at your questions here
yeah,
because I want to save paper. I don't want to print out all my stuff for
Yeah.
everybody.
but you project it. I mean,
I project it, but I rely on people looking at
having a device.
the document with their own device. And so if they don't have a device, I say, well, share with your neighbor, you know?
So I'm sorry, but then how are they taking the quiz if they're sharing with their neighbor? What am I missing here?
Okay, so they submit a tiny little sheet of paper.
Okay, so the answer.
You know, the answer sheet, and so that, you know, that's where they make their notes, and then I have a team version of that. So then the little sheet that they fill out is kind of like their record of what their answers would be when they discuss them in their team, you know? So,
Yeah, and I only go there because I am thinking that's like a real deal breaker. If you are going to do something that's a high stakes or a mandatory response, I got to have input from everybody. You can't, right?
Yeah.
You just can't rely that everybody's going to. Because even I didn't think of the power cord thing, but yeah, even if you had 100% compliance, I've got a device. I think that's not really going to guarantee anything. So anyway, I'm just good because that's affirming to what I had been thinking, that usually you're not using in class the technology and device stuff for an actual digitally submitted quiz. You know, you're not doing that. You're saying even if you do the quiz, you're still writing on paper, so everybody has access to it.
I've done that for low stakes quizzing.
Yeah.
And it's flexible. You can do it on a phone, you can do it on a tablet,
Okay.
computer.
That's
So
still points. And
Yeah.
if somebody doesn't have it, then you're talking
then
about.
they can't do it. But they
Well, what
could
you can do is
log
you
in.
can say, hey, we're gonna have a low stakes quiz, do it on your phone. If you don't have a phone, you use a Post-it note and
Yeah.
I'll hand grade it or
Yeah.
whatever. Like there is, it cuts down on 95% of your work, but not on all of the work. It minimizes-
Or open an incognito window on your LabMates
or-
browser
Yeah.
and take the quiz that way.
Or use mine here.
right,
Yeah,
right.
I do.
yeah. I do have a couple of old phones that I bring to class.
So how close are we? So you know how we have to come with our readers printed off? Like we've got to go pay $50 to Bob's Coffee Shop to make the reader, and that's required, right? Or we have to buy this $200 textbook. That is required for class. How close are we to, you need to come with a device that is charged, and it may cost you $200, but we won't make you buy a textbook instead. Like,
We're already pretty
when are
close.
these
though.
things going to be
Yeah.
required?
Well, isn't the template that,
Tablet, right?
isn't the template that, I think it was Timo, I know I got it from him, whether he made it, I don't know, but doesn't that, in the instructions, doesn't that include like minimum technology to take part in this class? So are we kind of there?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Because it is.
I have to come to class every day with one of these things. I bring my own
book.
The class didn't supply me with a pen.
And refilled with ink.
Right. And fully charged.
Yeah,
Right.
You know,
So are we, like, is this gonna be a thing where, right now, I think we'd agree, but tell me if I'm not correct. We don't require that. We go out of our way to say, oh, if you don't have this, we'll make an accommodation for you. But we've never said, well, if you don't have, well, maybe we have, because I remember, I always had a pile of them, right?
And there is a pretty distinct price difference,
Ah,
though.
yeah.
So, right? So
But-
you can
yeah.
expect people to have a pen because it costs $1, but having some sort of technology in the classroom,
But
That
your
can't
textbooks
be
are $200, which is not uncommon. You got 200, how's that? I mean, it's not much different than buying a $99
sure.
tablet.
But we also
from
have the
company
library
that
where you
has-
can
has
check out
Yeah.
a textbook or something like that. And
So-
that's why there's computer labs. on
And we have,
campus.
right, the library checks out the technology as well, so.
Yeah. We used to have our students buy a clicker, which was $20, and then a lab manual, which was $40. And so and with
Clickers are $65 now, I think, right? They're,
golly.
for the iClicker, I think they're, because it got fancier.
Oh,
And Top Hat, if you're gonna have your students use Top Hat, even if you're only using it for attendance, they have to have some sort of a device, even if it's just I think, well, it'll work on a regular chiclet style phone, dumb phone as well. But,
so I tried out this e-text thing where they provide a link, so the publishers give a substantial discount. I think the students pay $35 for the text. And so they deliver it via a link in the Canvas menu. And, I have to say, I mean, there's only 1 out of 60 students who opted out because, well, she said, I already have the book, so I'm not going to pay.
another $35.
Yeah.
But, it seemed like it worked pretty well in terms of having the textbook right there. Now, the only disadvantage I found was that, if people would be traditionally renting a book from the publisher itself, they have access to the web resources and stuff that the publisher provides, like answers to the end of chapter questions and whatever resources they have. And so that's not, at least I don't think that's available via the link in Canvas. It doesn't link to the publisher's website, but it just links to an ebook essentially.
So let's make the assumption, we'll do a thought experiment here, and make the assumption that we are now in classes and all of our students, 100% of them, have fully charged devices. What can we do in Canvas? We can do the lab manuals in Canvas. We can create pages that have resources for them to go do what? What happens in class? What's the thing that happens in class? Jennifer, can I pick on you to talk about how you guys use tablets in class? You
Oh,
can say no if you like.
well, I don't know that,
It's a specialized situation.
yeah, I don't know that the instructors I have right now are at the forefront of using Canvas in class. And that's not,
That was
like,
so
I'm,
nicely said.
Yeah.
So, that's okay.
Yeah.
well, but to be fair, I'm trying to think about how it would improve my learning experience to be doing something in Canvas in class, and I don't really know that it would. We started doing Top Hat this semester in one of my classes, and that's helpful just to have, a break. You take in all this information and you think you get it, but then when you have to actually respond to something and think of something on your own, it's a little bit different. So you could do comprehension check questions in Canvas or take a survey to see, like, are we ready to move on from this topic that's more anonymous than someone saying, wait, I don't understand, can we go back? But in terms of, like, anything super creative or mind-blowing,
That's a good perspective. to
Zip
have.
lock back over the devices and the,
oh, an anatomy lab. Yeah, so we did have, in our cadaver anatomy lab, we would have it wasn't through Canvas, it was through something else, but maybe we accessed it.
Was it
through
the articulate,
Canvas.
you had the articulate storyline?
Yeah, and it like walks you through the steps of what you need to do with a picture of like, this is what it should sort of look like. If it doesn't look like this, you've done something wrong. Like it's no. And that was very helpful. I mean, it's difficult because you're wearing gloves and there's like a bag over the device, and it's
So you don't get blood involved.
yeah, it's hard to like push the buttons with all that stuff on, but that was helpful. But it was also like they also provided videos that kind of walked you through the dissection before class that you were expected to watch, so you had some sort of idea of what the game plan was once you got there. And those, like if I could get the general idea from those, I much preferred to do that and just kind of go than to like have to stop. It's like when you follow a recipe and you have to look at each step in between and your hands are messy versus if you know the whole thing and then you can go in and do the whole thing and it goes much more smoothly.
And that's a great example of the just-in-time learning, right? You don't have to memorize the recipe ahead of time because you've got it right there. The recipe is our bodies. You can do this and then be like, okay, I'm not overwhelmed into smaller digestible chunks. So if you have a process, make your cake, or kind of your body,
Digestible.
that you can do it step by step, and that's a useful thing. What other, and then we talked about, well, in many ways, that's what you're doing with your pages, the links, because I need to do this, now the next thing that I need to do is this, and I can click on that link and go to that. And it's the same as the lab manuals, right, that you're talking about. So just-in-time learning is a really one big umbrella category of what we can do with this in class. What other things can we do? Does technology in Canvas, for example, let us do?
Well, I mean, just talking about this a little bit yesterday, but you know, the use and again, it's using Canvas to access other stuff. But for instance, the Google Forms to get instant feedback, whether it's feedback about how the course is going or you know money as points or whatever. So that's that kind of instant access. Doing either no stakes or low stakes quizzes through Canvas. The other thing I like to use it for is the peer review process for short, small assignments, just to, you know, students have uploaded their assignment in class, and I can then switch on peer reviews, randomly and anonymously assign the peer review, and have them, you know, that's a task they can do in class.
In class, like
Yeah.
doing the review.
We
in
can
class.
actually do the peer review in class, because what I like to do is I might have the assignment guidelines on the screen so they can refer to that as they look at this, as they look at the partner's submitted work and say, oh, I noticed that you haven't included one of these points and you should.
And
And
as
so then,
opposed to pass your paper 3 to the right.
right, and so then what I get is a much better quality draft to grade, and they get the bonus of reviewing someone else's work and learning from that process themselves.
And again, it's the pass your paper to, in some ways, it's we're doing the same things that we've done in the past, but here's a different
Is
digitally
another way.
enhanced, technologically assisted way of doing that. You were gonna say something, Jennifer?
I was just gonna say, I think that especially works well when you have group work, because you can do, I often get frustrated when I'm in class and I'm doing something that I could be doing from home. Like there's not a reason that I need to be in the classroom, but when you're with groups, or maybe it's a group project, then you do the peer review in class and you can work as a group to do the peer review, but then you can also go back to your base group and review the feedback as a group and kind of think through it that way.
That's a
So
really
yeah, I
good point.
think that's really useful.
In preparing for this lab, I saw a video that was on the Canvas community about an instructor, it was a K-12 instructor, and he talked about, well, how can I use Canvas? And he was in high school. And he talked about, great, I'll have them do this in-class assignment in Canvas. How using the discussion thing where they have to read something, write a post, and then, in response to it, and then check on somebody else, add a comment to somebody else's post, right? Standard discussion format stuff. And then he said, that worked so well that I decided to see how far I could do it. And he ended up creating 20 questions, and your entire class period, the students were set, they were answering questions, reading the readings, responding to somebody else's through the discussion thing. And I thought to myself, he said, and the principal came in and he said, wow, I've never seen a class so engaged. And I thought to myself, okay, high school, sort of they have to be there, they have to be in the room, they should be engaged, that might work. But what about this flipped classroom in college? Do they have to be here for that kind of work? No, if I'm just gonna have my students go work through 20 questions and do discussion, they can do it asynchronously over the course of the week when they're not in class. So there's an example of, here's using Canvas in class, but why would you do that? What's the,
Yeah, I wouldn't call that engaged.
or we could just talk to each other and work together, right? So this was, and he mentioned that it was a, let's see how far we can take this. So it was done in the form of an experiment, but to me, I don't know if that was a successful experiment, or it was successful because we learned, yes, we can do this, but then it raises more questions, which is an experiment will do, right?
No, I think it's there.
Cause I wouldn't even call that flipping the classroom, that's more of like, if you had them do it outside of class and then come and talk about it all together,
Yep.
that's flipping the classroom.
Yeah.
This is
Yes.
having them
Right.
do online work.
In class,
In high
if you're
school, you
flipping the
can.
classroom in classroom, it's not flipping the classroom.
Yeah.
High school, that may be the only time you're getting the kids to actually do the work in the end. Fine, they're, at least this
This
is
is
1
true.
hour in one day that they're actually thinking about something academic. You give it to them, do that classroom.
Yeah.
And he talked about it being an element of classroom management, right? Which is more of a deal, hopefully, than with people who have to be there that don't want to be there, than hopefully we have in our classrooms where people are like, I want to be here. They might not fully want to be here, but they want the benefits, right?
The parents will.
You know, the point I was going to underscore in yours, I think how to use Canvas in class could be a bridge between, you know, the blended learning and the
Right.
online learning. And so and the bridge is valuable because, you know, they can start something in class and then, you know, continue working on it at home, you know? And so all the bugs are, you know, that everybody can look at the stuff and the bugs are worked out when they leave class. Now, so it's interesting that you say, John, how far can you push this? Because, I've tried the same thing, you know, push things. And so more and more things move from a blended environment to a kind of complete online course. But then what happens, and I don't know quite how to respond to this, is that people don't show up anymore, you know? I mean, you know, like in the, you know, the lecture period, you know, you provide them with all the information online and you know, you start the discussions online and then it's kind of like, oh, well, man, you know, why would I even
What's
get
the
up at
value?
8:30 in the morning? You know?
And I think that's a great question for us because I think we have to make sure that face-to-face time is valuable for the students so that they are in there making the most of the time to discuss, to learn together. Social learning is what should be happening.
So what, I'm gonna change marker. What are the things that are valuable in class, that class brings that, well, let's just start there. What are the things that are valuable in class? And then we're gonna go to the next step, which I'm gonna see here, is what are the things that are valuable in class that technology can enhance the value of the things that you need to be face-to-face with? Jennifer?
Brainstorming.
Brainstorming is good, face-to-face. Why can't I brainstorm online together with the Google Doc?
It's an isolated shower. It's not a storm.
All right, I'm glad you were talking about weather.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
Yep. Yes, I did not realize that before I said that. I was speaking strictly meteorologically.
There's something about brainstorming that if I'm only brainstorming with other words on the screen, the people are kind of gone. If I say something in a group and somebody's like, you know, you see their eyes widen and they're onto something, I get as the initial speaker, I get feedback that, oh, I just said something good. So I get that little endorphin rush because I just saw the reaction. And that will, there's something there, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's, yeah. Brainstorm instead of brain shower.
Isolated
shower.
isolated storm.
What else? Brainstorming. That, now I'm gonna, so, nonverbals.
Yep.
Nonverbal
Soft
feedback.
skills? Oh,
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was wondering if that included soft skills.
Yeah, so
Interpersonal skills,
let's dig into that a little bit. What kind of social skills, what kind of soft skills?
how to give feedback diplomatically, politely. How to ask for feedback.
How to be a social creature.
Yeah.
Communicating.
How to be a good
Can't I be a social creature online?
No, okay, so, one skill, I think that's very important, is to balance the listening and the talking.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like what you override in an online discussion board, and so there you try to use it to your advantage of saying somebody that's not willing to speak up in public, can have their say in written format, but, like the interaction, face-to-face interaction, it's very important that
I was actually thinking,
you have equal time talking and listening, and so that everybody can express their.
He's ready to talk over you.
well, that's right. But I was thinking, I was going the other direction. You were saying that, the digital provides kind of an even playing field, that the less outspoken. I was thinking the other way of saying it provides an unhealthy playing field because extroverts who want to talk all the time, I only have to listen to what you say. I'm just going to give my stuff. I'm just doing my stuff. I don't even have time. I don't have time to read your stuff.
I think this is good.
Whereas if we're social, then I have to kind of let you talk, or else I'm being seen to be a jerk because I keep cutting you off when you're trying to finish your thought. So,
And this might be this hybrid space where if it's a digital interactions in a face-to-face classroom, the people who are a little bit more introverted, who aren't me, I want to talk more, I want to talk next all the time. The people who are shyer, who need to double check what they're about to say, they can do this, double check it, hit return when they're ready, and still interact in that conversation without having to try to interrupt the people who dominate the conversations. Now, we can also say that in that social face-to-face thing, even introverts need, I'm saying this as an extrovert, so I apologize. They need to learn how to get into a conversation and say things.
It's true.
So the face-to-face offers that in some ways, or do they?
I think it just wraps up kind of the whole soft skill. There are just things about being part of a social society.
All right, what's another one, and then we're gonna go into how can technology help it a little bit more.
And this is the brainstorming of what are the good things about being
Face-to-face, yeah.
A big thing in my class environment is there's a group of 4, one person knows the answer and has to teach the other 3 people.
Okay,
Which it's possible online, but it's stilted. It's less of a conversation, more of here's the answer kind of thing, rather than I have to walk you through and make sure you know, and those nonverbal cues of, oh, now you got it,
okay.
that sort of thing.
I think, so as instructors, have we, as you've been moving things online, Peter, I'm gonna pick on you, have you found that there are a lot of things that you used to be able to do in face-to-face situations that now that you move it into an online situation, you have to be way more clear and step-by-step, and so there's something about that. You would not have been able to get there if you just started off with that, because we have to sort of struggle through what does this look like in a face-to-face situation? Because I get the feedback from other people and they continue to look confused when I say stuff that they should totally get.
Yeah.
You don't get that feedback in an online digital space. So again, we're going to the nonverbals, but you're right, in teaching somebody else and in teaching your peers especially, that's an important part.
So
Yeah, I hear it a lot.
what I found to be extremely valuable in terms of making things work is to communicate very clearly the intentions that you have for people, to participate in activities like rubrics, prompts, discussion prompts. The more information you put in there for people to use, and so what the expectations are, the better it's gonna work. Now, in the face-to-face thing, you're always there and say, well, what I want you to do is this, this, this. But, it has to be completely transparent, I think, It's so
Go ahead.
on the topic of social skills in general, there was a couple of years ago, there was an article in the New York Times Magazine that says what Google learned, what makes an effective team. And I think it's a very interesting article because they have a lot of data and they went through to look for patterns. And so what they came up with essentially are two things. One is what they called kind of like creating psychological safety, like, having everybody equally listen and talk. The second thing was kind of like a sensitivity to somebody's personal and social needs, kind of, like empathy and kind of like being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Those were the two things out of all the, they had 50 years of research that they put into this. They called it Project Aristotle.
I remember reading that as well. And in some ways, we're starting to move on to like, what can data show us? What are the advantages now of the technologically enhanced face-to-face activities? How can the technology enhance brainstorming? One of the big things is documentation, right?
Yeah, for our exam reviews, when folks can't make it, we set up a shared Google Doc, and a couple people who can make it take notes for the people who can't make the exam review. So that documentation helps a lot, and then it's student produced for other students.
There's an element of peer check there as well.
Yeah.
In a collaborative document, right, where if I say something and it's wrong, sometimes that gets lost. But if it's written down or documented somehow via technology, then I can go back in and say, oh wait, actually that should have been glossed over, that should have been corrected, and somebody else can correct it. So we can see where, there's also a feedback about seeing where we are in understanding content that sometimes in face-to-face discussions, we just tend to be like, I don't know where I am. Or everyone else is getting this and I can't. I'm stupid, I don't get this, but I might be wrong about this, so help me figure this out. Does technology help with that? I think having like the ability to anonymously ask questions is a way that technology can help. In a face-to-face classroom, raising your hand sort of out, I don't know the answer, I don't get this, I'm stupid, I don't belong here. But if I can do it anonymously, then I don't have to fear that as much. So, yeah, questions.
I would have some anecdotal evidence to corroborate that we have Q&A in lecture, and most of the types of, it's not used heavily, but most of the types of questions are asked anonymously, and they are that sort of, I don't want to say low level question, but kind of simple to answer question.
Right.
Do we have lab tonight? What room is it in?
Right.
That sort of thing, that I don't really want to embarrass myself by saying that sort of thing. Yeah.
And a lot of those questions can be answered by peers,
Yeah.
which helps sort of build cultural capital there, like, oh, I might not be the smartest person in class, but I was paying attention when they talked about what time class was, so I can answer that question. I'm your hero.
And my name's on the board then.
And, right.
and I'll call them out and say 6,000 bonus points to this person. The points don't matter, but 6,000 bonus points.
So in the last few minutes, let's talk about any other options that we can do in Canvas or ways that Canvas itself can help foster these things. We talked a little bit about discussions as one option. We talked about pages and having them follow directions on a Canvas page. And again, the Canvas app now lets them do that very nicely.
I think one valuable thing in general is to use Canvas as kind of like, in a way to unify everything together. So for example, the Piazza app, for example, would be one where you say, okay, well, we can use it, but why would we use another one? And so if you can implement something in Canvas, then they learn one thing rather than have to switch.
It keeps it simple and it's central enough.
Right.
And I think it keeps it simple, because sometimes Canvas is very complicated, and I think like the interaction that Piazza requires or makes easy those are hard to do in Canvas. You can even do them. But at least you don't have to go into another application. And with Piazza, they've got the login, so it stays within Canvas, so that's actually pretty good. But it is a different system that one has to learn instead of focusing on the content. So, yeah. Starting things in class together was another one that I think is a great use of using technology in class. Because all of those troubleshooting things, if you started in class, you can start to address those initial questions that people will have so that they leave with an understanding of the system, of the new system or whatever it is that they have to work on their own afterwards. And then they come back hopefully having done the assignment that they needed to do. Groups, Canvas groups, gives them that space to they can create their own discussions in groups, they can upload their own pages, create their own pages, etc.
Groups would be a really good topic for just expanded this team training opportunities. I think there are some neat features with that little over on the red map bar and what happens in groups and create spaces and how to. I think everybody knows probably the generic stuff about how to create a group assignment, but using it beyond just that.
Yeah.
That is a good thing. Let's do one next semester on that. Yeah, thank you for writing it down there as well. Just clarifying for us. All right, are there any thoughts or questions that we haven't talked about? Does anybody have any? I wish we talked about. It's complicated, I think, and because it's a different way of teaching, because we're moving from, and I think that you found this as well, in the face-to-face, it's different from the online space. And this hybrid space or blended space where we try to mix the two sometimes is odd. Because there are advantages of the one that don't fully fit into the other space. And in some ways it's a frontier that's not fully, I don't know, there's humans and robots and then there's cyborgs, right? Cyborgs are the most interesting, in my opinion, right? Because they've got all kinds of issues. So here's kind of a cyborg class that we're talking about here. It's part face-to-face and part online. And it has its own challenges.
And opportunities.
And opportunities.
Yeah, that's right.
Challenge is just another word for opportunity.
That's the John Martin thesaurus right there.
All right. Thank you you all for coming today and participating. And if you just fill out a couple of check boxes on your way out, that'd be super awesome. Put it in the basket in the back of there. And hope to see you next time. If you have any ideas on how to get other instructing folks here, we've got a couple of empty chairs this week.